So you did say there is a story behind.
But behind the restaurant on the beach?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of how all of this got started. So when I was in high school, I had already, washed dishes and graduated to line cook, if you will. It was my senior year, and it was right before New Year's. I remember it really distinctively because I really didn't want to do the 4-year school. I didn't want to go to the community college and figure it out. And it just, I don't know, I was like, I'm tired of school. Like, I had already had enough credits and honors and stuff to where I was only at I only had maybe 2 or 3 periods my senior year anyway. And it was just, for the cores like science, math, English. And I'm like, I really just don't want to go through another 4 years. Like, I want to go get life started. Like, I was very anxious to go do something. And my dad's company, his company was High Tide Boat Lifts. So they manufactured and built boat lifts up in Fort Pierce. And he had always said, come work with me. And I'm like, man, I just don't want to be the kid that's like, oh, what are you doing? I'm going to go work with my dad. Like, I love my dad. We had a great relationship. I just didn't want, I want to go make my own thing, I want to go do my own thing. This cooking thing's kind of fun. And at the time, I was at the Ruby Tuesdays, which was out in St. Lucie West. It's now on Tailgaters. And I was a line cook, I knew all the stations, I did prep, whatever. And my dad's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know, I think I want to be a chef because my general manager had said, hey, why don't you think about culinary school? And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's a school I would do. It's about 2 years and you get to cook and learn a little bit about it. And to give you some context, at the time that all this was going on, Hell's Kitchen season 1 was just debuting. Emeril Lagasse was still on TV. So cooking was really cool. There was awesome celebrity chefs. That was just really kind of starting to be at its peak before these, excuse my language, bullshit shows on Food Network. We were flipping through the channel last night. Hold on, sidebar. We were flipping through the channels last night, and it was chopped. And I looked at Tiff. I'm like, I fucking hate this show. Am I okay in language here?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I fucking hate this show. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because look at the ingredients. It was strawberry pizza, century egg, which if you don't know, it's a basically, for lack of better, it's a fermented egg for months. Ew. In clay and ash buried in the ground in the sun, and it's just black, gooey, nasty thing. Tarragon and I don't know, Pop Rocks or something. And here's all these chefs sitting up here oh, your tarragon and your strawberry bread pudding. I'm like, yeah, nobody can make a dish with that. It's disgusting, and it's always like that. It's it gets worse and worse. So I'm like, this show's ridiculous. If they could take all these weird fucking ingredients, they could make good food from it. They're a great chef. I'm like, nobody can make anything with that. Fucking strawberry pizza and fermented egg. What are you going to do to that? There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing you can do to mask that. Yeah. So anyway, in my opinion, this was kind of the golden age of celebrity chefs. It was awesome. And so I think about culinary school, and I was like, well, that sounds cool. So I come home, I'm like, Dad, I think I want to be a chef. And he's like, what are you, nuts? And I was like, well, I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, look, you're going to have no life, no family life. You're going to work, 80, 90 hours a week for what, $500 a week? He's like, they don't get paid well, this, that, the other. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And he goes, if you want to go to culinary school, he's like, I'll support it. He's like, but for the rest of your senior year, this was the key. He goes, for the rest of your senior year, go work in a high-end restaurant. Go work where you're proud to do the food, not this blue cheese, black and blue burger stuff. He's like, go work in a real restaurant. And I'm like, okay. So I think about it for a couple of days, and the internet was just kind of dial-up modems. Yeah. So it's not like you're doing a lot of search engines here.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking through the newspaper, looking for job ads, and not much. And so a couple days go by, and I'm like, Dad, I go to Tropical Smoothie when I skip school. I don't go to nice restaurants. So you take people out to nice restaurants. Where do you go? He goes, go to Roddy's. I said, okay, I'll go apply there. So that Roddy's back then was where my restaurant is now. It was the building on the beach, right? And they were a high-end restaurant. And so I went and applied, and the chef interviewed me right at the end of the bar, in front of the bar taps, which are still there today. And he said, yeah, I'll start you at $9.50 an hour, and you can come, do some prep, and we'll work you in on the line, and we'll see how you do. So I gave my notice at Ruby Tuesdays, where I was making like $10.50 an hour, and was right around the corner from my house, and drove 45 minutes, because I was living out in St. Lucie West, and drove 45 minutes. These guys, the chefs, they all had white chef coats like you see on TV. I'd never seen that before. They had all this cool equipment, they're cooking things in pans and setting them on fire, and I'm like, whoa, like this is this is cool. Like there's ingredients I'd never seen before, so I was really just amazed. And so I worked there for for about a year and a half, and Hurricanes Gene and Francis, when they came through the area, they actually shut the restaurant down, and it closed. And at that point, I was now in culinary school, so I ended up working down south. But that was kind of my intro into that building. So I knew the building really well. I knew what we used to do at Roddy's. I knew the history of it. I kind of knew what that customer base was. That restaurant sat empty for 9 years, right? Oh, wow. The owners, they maintained it. They kept it up. They had it for sale. For whatever reason, it never sold. And then, the gentleman in our area that has the mansion out on the island where all the Christmas lights are, mm-hmm. He ended up buying it in 2013. And then he leased it to a guy named Pietro. Pietro was the original general manager of Roddy's when they opened in '99. Through some mutual friends, he had found out that I had worked there, and over the last 9-10 years, developed my skill set, became a chef, was in management. So he interviewed me, and he hired me to be the executive chef of Pietro. So I got to close that building and reopen it. So I was there for a whole nother year as the executive chef, which helped me develop a relationship with Bob and Elsa, the husband and wife couple that owned the building. After about a year working for Pietro, I couldn't take it anymore, so I left, and that's what ended up getting me with Capital Grill's sister company, Eddie V's, and then they sent me to San Diego and that whole thing. So I was gone for about 4 or 5 years, and I ended up, so real quick, so I started when I left Pietro's, I was hired as a sous chef for Eddie V's out in Orlando. I did my training out there, and I was supposed to go open the Tyson's Corner up in Virginia by DC to go open that location, but their construction was delayed, and then their sous chef left out in La Jolla, California, just outside of San Diego. And that restaurant is an awesome 3-story restaurant on the cliffs of La Jolla, overlooking the Pacific. And it was kind of like, at the time, if you worked at La Jolla, you were the guy or the girl to you knew what you were doing with Eddie V's. That was kind of like the precipice of Eddie V's at the time. And so my director of operations called me. He's like, hey, you want to go to La Jolla? I was like, yep, sure do. So they sent me out there for 30 days to just assist. And after about 2 weeks, we want to keep you here. So they moved me out there. I was with them for about a year, and then I took an executive chef role, still within Darden, but with Yard House. So I transferred into downtown, the Gaslamp District, and I was an executive chef for Yard House for a year. And then it was very fortuitous. This is crazy how this happened. So we're in the first floor and the basement. We occupied this big apartment building, old building. And it was Sunday night. I was off, just watching TV, whatever. And my sous chef calls me and he says, hey, chef, we got a problem. And I'm like, what's up? What happened? And he says, the poop water's raining in the restaurant. And I said, oh, dude, it's 7:30. It's starting service. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And he sent me a video. And there's multiple points throughout this whole restaurant where something happened with the sewage pipes in the apartments and stuff. And it was raining all the poop water in the dining room. In the bar area. I mean, it was coming out of light fixtures. It was just, so obviously we closed, and then Darden sent their when we closed and did not reopen, and they're like, nobody's even allowed in the building. We're not getting sick till they could send people. They're headquartered in Orlando, so they sent their facilities people out, and they said, yeah, we're this go through all their legal battles with their landlord and stuff, but they're like, we're not going to reopen this. We're not going to rebuild it because we have to gut the restaurant, and it's just not, financially worth it. And they had just opened a new one in the mall, the Mission Valley Mall, maybe 4 or 5 miles away. So they did great. They came in, they took all the team members, they brought all the general managers and managing partners from all the other darting concepts in, had a big meeting. People were getting job placements and stuff, whether it was Seasons 52, Eddie V's, Red Lobster at the time, whatever, right? And they're like, my director of operations didn't want to lose me because I was doing a good job. And so he's like, a couple other restaurants need some help. So they sent me to Palm Springs for a couple months. They sent me to Temecula. And finally he's like, look, it looks like Portland, Oregon is open. And I was like, no. No way. Like, nope. And so I said, hey man, I know this will take me out of your district. I said, but do you have anything back in South Florida? Like, I'm kind of over this communism out here. I'm ready to go home. And sure enough, they had a spot in Boca, right? And so I went to Meisner Park and I was the chef there for a year. And that was when I found out that they weren't re-signing the lease for PHO, and he was going out of business, and they didn't have anyone else to go in there and operate it at the time. So I got back in touch with the landlord, and he said, yeah, let's come have a meeting. So I went up, had a meeting, and walked out of that meeting with a lease and a deal, and we got to work, and PHO closed in June, and we reopened and got it refurbished, trained, hired, everything like that on September 20th. September 20th. So that was that. So it's my third time in the building now. And it was great because, I had kind of, each one of those things were a stepping stone, right? It's as a line cook or as a prep guy. I mean, I remember chopping shrimp and mushrooms next to for the Sunday brunch bar, or for the brunch omelet station on Saturday night, next to the steamer going off and people running around. I mean, it was grunt work, I was the guy working the omelet station, folding stuff for the carving station when we do the Sunday brunch buffets. Eventually I ended up learning, salad station and saute, and that's when it ended up closing. And then getting to reopen it as the chef, write the menu, do the training, and then being able to come back then again as the owner and say, hey, here's how we're doing this. It was really, really amazing and very, very fortunate. I mean, that whole full circle story is just, it's insane. But I remember telling Bob, he said, he's like, why are you here? Do you want a job? Like, what are you trying to do? And I said, Bob, with all due respect, I'm running restaurants for Darden. I'd like to do it for myself and build a company of restaurants and use this as a launching pad, as a springboard to do that. And he respected that, and he was like, all right, kid, let's see what you got. I mean, I was 32 at the time, I think, 31, 32, and he was like, all right, let's see what you got. So I was like, all right, well, you're not going to find anyone who's going to work harder than me. I'm like, so I'll go in there and get to it. So excuse me, so that's what we did.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have a lot of key people. It wasn't just me. I mean, I had a lot of key people. Percy Tercero, Tillin, Cynthia. I mean, a lot of key people that are still with us to this day, that are in our kitchen, that are in our front house, that were all part of that and went through the successes, the challenges, the failures, the wins, that are still there today. Whether they're still in that building or with me elsewhere throughout the organization, it's really cool. So